Now, there's like the elephant in the room. Human sacrifice is the mother lode of bad ideas. It's always forbidden.
All right. We got right on from D.C. Welcome back. Go ahead with your question, Rowden. You're live on the air.
Hi, Rabbi. Because all I have to do is turn to Isaiah 1 to see God saying, you know, your sacrifices mean nothing to me. I hate your Sabbaths and your new moons. But when we have these commandments, we expect to follow them. Where is the example that we should not do those commandments anymore?
The most transparent answer is Leviticus 17. If only the book of Hebrews had quoted it in context. You only can bring a sacrifice in a place on the altar in the temple. I mean, it's just that simple. Let alone you can't bring human sacrifices. And in fact, there was atonement that was brought about by paying a chatzi shekel, a half a shekel. Incense could be used to atone for the nation. So you have so many examples of this. I want to ask a question that's so rudimentary that people don't even bother thinking about it. Like, why do we need a book of Isaiah? Why couldn't we just have the 5 books of Moses? Like, why do we need Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel? These are the oracular prophets. Like, why do I need it? There's no new commandment in Isaiah. There's no new commandment in the book of Samuel. So why do I need any of that? Why couldn't the Jewish Bible just consist of the 5 books of Moses? Well, I think you answered the question yourself, and that is people would presume that these rituals would save them. So Jeremiah screamed as an example, they actually won't. Jeremiah 7, a very important speech that continues into chapter 8, Jeremiah excoriates the Jewish people thinking that the temple of the Lord would save them, that sacrifices would save them, and they were making a mistake. They misapprehended the importance of the sacrificial system and what effect it would have. Now, if you look at the text carefully, you see that the sacrifice for sin, as an example, is for sins committed unintentionally. And if sins are committed intentionally, the sacrificial system doesn't work. With the exception of if you confess the sin, you're not caught, that's Leviticus 5, there's a carbon osham, a guilt offering. So a special provision is made for that. And the sacrifice for someone who brought a sacrifice instead of impurity, so you brought a sacrifice instead of purity on Yom Kippur. So this is all so transparent. So the prophets of this say, guys, you've really misapprehended the sacrificial system and atonement and a relationship with God. And in fact, God doesn't want any of that stuff. He does if you really are right by God. I mean, look at Psalm 51. Like King David committed sins that you probably have never committed, right? Pretty bad. Now, while the sages tell us there were some mitigating circumstances, there were horrible things he did, right? Well, King David said, like, you don't want these sacrifices of sin. What do you want? A broken and contrite heart. That's what you won't reject. Read it for yourself. So what's happening is people have a certain sense of confidence that if you have the temple of the Lord with sacrifices, that would save you. And Jeremiah is there to say, this is not Tovia. I didn't write the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah is saying that you have an inappropriate reliance on the sacrificial system. Look at Isaiah chapter 1. Isaiah says that I don't even want any of these rituals because you're defiling my temples. And he says that if you feed the hungry, take care of the poor, clothe the naked, although your sins are as red as scarlet, I'll make them as white as snow. I'll forgive you. So what is Isaiah doing? He says, you just totally misunderstood. There was among the Jewish people a misplaced priority on these commandments as though these were the most important thing. Now there's like the elephant in the room. Human sacrifice is the mother lode of bad ideas. It's always forbidden. It's a very specific animal. It's a kosher animal. Its blood had to be put on the altar, even for those offerings. Let's just end with this point. The reason why Christianity is very attractive is because we have all been betrayed many times in our lives. We've been hurt by people who should have protected us, right? So what's attractive is that someone was willing to die for you, like paid the price for you. It's a transaction. So it's like, wow, like Jesus, like he did something like my best friend wouldn't do for me. That's what's really going on. It has nothing to do with the sacrificial system, none at all. The sacrificial system was for the weakest forms of sin. Now, it is true that if you read the end of Psalm 51, it is true that sacrifices of righteousness that God will not reject, he will not despise that. It is true. So please read the whole chapter in context. The context is King David is lamenting his own sins, and there were many of them. Okay, that's how it begins. So I don't trust me, okay? Please don't. Just please read Psalm 51 in context. So King David is talking about his own sins, his own failures in his own life. We're very aware of what they are. And now he's addressing how to, and what does he say? He says, does God want, blood? He doesn't want any of those things. What he does want is for you to really be sorry, and that God will not reject. And we see that come up in the Bible in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 13, in a very intimate conversation between the prophet Nathan and David, where Nathan provides a juridical parable, and David says, Chatasi Lashem, I've sinned before the Lord, and Nathan tells him that the Lord has already forgiven you. And what effect do you think that had on King David? Huge. So I'd like you to ask the question, like, why is there a section of the Bible called the prophets? The reason is that people have they misapprehend the importance of certain commandments over other commandments. They think that if they do the ritual things, that's good enough. And how you treat your fellow neighbor, if you get your sacrifices right, that's okay. So Isaiah is there to say, actually, it's disgust me. And God says, if you're going to pray to me, I don't even want to hear you. I mean, Isaiah chapter 1 is I think the hardest chapter in Tanakh to read. And it's not a coincidence that we read that chapter on the Sabbath prior to Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the 5th month, the saddest day of the year. Okay, guys? So the prophets are there to set you straight, to explain to you what's very important to God, where people can make a mistake. So the point is not to turn your back on Isaiah and selectively choose Isaiah 7, 9, and 53 and ignore all the other 63 chapters in the book of Isaiah. I mean, why do Christians place so much importance on Isaiah 53? Like, why don't we say, but look at the 5 books of Moses, you don't have an Isaiah 53 there. I mean, a Christian would laugh at you. So I would say this to Christians, please use equal weights and measurements. Look at all of the Bible. The role of the prophets is to show you the mistakes you're making, how to correct them, and then, of course, we have the wisdom literature, the Tovia, the writings, and that tells you really how to get back to God. I mean, that's why it's there, or else what do you need it for? This was a terrific show. I want to thank all of you who had really pressing questions, probing questions. I thought they were all very, very thoughtful. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא ואת נעשה בחפצו כל